Saudi Arabia has oil, while China has very valuable rocks. This is Bayun Obo, Inner Mongolia. Mile upon mile of mineral-rich craters, blasted, shoveled, shifted, then processed to produce, from here alone, over half of the world's supply of rare earth metals. These elements like lanthanum and dysprosium are light malleable and have strong electrical and magnetic properties. Rare earths are essential to modern tech-driven urban life. In fact, your mobile phone or laptop could well contain a piece of northern China.
As we entered the 21st century, it was clear that rare earth is the treasure of new materials. It's the key high-tech material, and in many sectors, there is no other metal substitute.
And for now at least, there's virtually no alternative to China, which controls 97% of the global rare earth supply chain. The US used to dominate the market, but in the mid-1980s, China ramped up production and undercut prices, rendering exploitation of North American reserves unviable. For most of the past 20 years, the developed world has allowed its own mines and processing plants to close, relying on low-cost Chinese supplies instead. But technology hasn't stood still. Today, industries dependent on rare earth metals, including fibre optic cables that power the internet, flat-screen TVs and alternative energy applications, account for an estimated 5% of the global economy. As the world embraces the green revolution, developing alternatives to fossil fuel power, demand for rare earths is expected to grow by 10% annually, spurred on by governments offering incentives to low-emissions products like hybrid cars.
When the electric motor starts, the petrol engine stops, so no fuel consumption and no exhaust. Compared with a standard engine car, this hybrid can save 41.7% on petrol.
Each Toyota hybrid uses up to 2 kilograms of these key metals in their drive motor and rechargeable battery. And this car maker alone plans to double current production to 1 million units in 2011. But from hybrid cars to tech gadgets to huge wind farms sprouting around the world, producing tomorrow's green technology is fraught with problems. First, the eco-contradiction. Mining and processing rare earth elements in China is a dirty business, even in a large plant like this. Many smaller plants don't bother to treat toxic chemical-laden runoff properly, instead discharging waste straight into rivers. And then there's the supply chain itself, which is now under pressure, and China has upped the ante. In a bid to control prices and consolidate a fragmented industry, an export quota was introduced in 2004. This has decreased every year since, with an export tariff rising. Overseas demand now surpasses the quota, leaving downstream Western manufacturers vulnerable. The US and the EU complain that China's rare earth production strategy, its trade, taxation, investment and export policies violates its World Trade Organization commitments and distorts competition. The Chinese, on the other hand, argue that if others want more rare earth metals, then they should exploit their own resources. So rare earths are now highly political, and especially so for the US military, which in a glaring example of supply chain neglect depends on imports of these metals for sophisticated radar and weapons. To bolster global supplies, plans are now in place to have 2 new rare earth projects in California and Australia operational by 2014. However, Bayun Obo will still be by far the world's biggest mine, though China wants to ensure that its output is used to mainly develop domestic tech manufacturing, especially as other countries, including South Africa, Canada and Brazil, are sitting on reserves.
They have their own resources, can develop their processing industries, and they have their own market demands. Why do they only depend on supply from China? It's unreasonable.
China, of course, is cheaper. That aside, it's not out to totally deny others of more rare earths, the likes of which are used in these eco-friendly washing machine motors. These low-noise, energy-efficient components are made in the US with rare earth metals from China. The finished parts are then shipped back to this factory in China's Qingdao for assembly.
They are good at producing parts, and in partnership, we make the job easier. The two companies are responsible for design and development, but our suppliers produce the components.
But by cutting its export quota, China, with its near monopoly of rare earths, is in effect strong-arming parts makers to move production here in order to guarantee supply. For foreign companies, this presents a considerable sovereign risk. For the Chinese, such investment would help realise its goal to move the economy further up the value chain. Rare earths are of such high strategic value that tensions between the key players will certainly not be in short supply.